Hi folks, Jen or Griffin here today to continue Battle of the Bottom Feeders Part 2. We're going to take a look at the Phideas Feedimus, the MonkeyBoxx, I have the variable vault model, and then we're going to end it up with the BOGE Revolution, and then my take on all the bottom feeders, at least how I see them. Let's go ahead and get started. So these are my two Phideas Feedimuses, which are bottom fed box mods. Very beautiful wood and finish. Nice small comfortable boxes to hold in your hand. This is the 3.7 version in zebra wood. The wood is beautiful. Take the atomizer off, and there's a very small little drip well there. It doesn't really seem to need a big one. It doesn't seem to come back out the atomizer. It seems to pretty much go back into the bottle or stay in the atomizer, which is good. The grain all matches up. It's nicely bookmarked on the front. It's just a really pretty looking mod. Standard black project button. A little wooden cutout button on the back for squeezing the bottle. The door is held with an earth magnet in the middle there, and it's fit very tight. It's not hard to get off, but it's not just going to go off. 18650 battery. This is kind of odd in that it goes in upside down because the spring is on the top rather than on the bottom. You can see a little extra magnet on the screw there. A 3 ml juice bottle, and then the electronics is sealed in epoxy there, going up to the atomizer connector. I find it's easier. The door not going to come off even when it's not on tight. As for the bottle itself, I find it's much easier to get out when the atomizer is off. So you grab it by the edge of the bottle with your fingernail, push it up, push the needle up, and then pull the bottle out itself. The bottle assembly is just a bottle top that's been cut off, kind of uneven, and it has a syringe tip shoved through that opening. It's not in there really tight. You can see there's been a little bit of leakage. Doesn't do it too much, and that should just be my error in putting the bottle in, or feeding too much, or not having that needle tip down, because it hasn't really done that before. But there's no hose connected to it, and that needle, as you can see, is loose and pushing it in. So it's basically the top of the bottle. As you screw the top on, that is holding that needle up and out. Now, because there's also no no tube running down to the bottom of the bottle, you have to turn it upside down to squeeze. So to put the bottle back in, you just feed it through the hole in the atomizer connector and put the bottle back in its spot. Once the needle's in, you can screw the atomizer or cartomizer back on. That happens to be a LR306. Pop our battery back in, and now to feed it, I'm doing this with a clear tip so you can see. Watch right down there by the bridge. When I squeeze the bottle, you can see that the juice does come up there. So I like to see how much I'm feeding. The Canon drip tips are nice for that. And most of the time, this little button here is just held by like a little reed that's epoxied to it. It does hit the bottle, but I don't feel like I have a lot of control with it. When it's full, it works better. As the bottle starts to get a little lower, I kind of find myself actually taking the door off. That reed doesn't really act like a very good spring. And sometimes the act of pushing that button in against the bottle actually pushes the back of the door off a little bit. This is my other model, which I got from Bruce, secondhand. Phideas may have made this, but he claims never to have made a variable voltage model, so we're not sure if someone made this entire unit or someone just took a Feedimus and modded it, but it's got kind of that little Ali type drip cup on the bottom, which is different than most of the other models. Has the same project button, the same shape and markers on it, the same kind of door finish, although there's a little scoop there, and the same kind of wooden button. Door comes off. This one uses two RCR 123As. It has a piece of metal on the opposite side of the door here, and the screw is catching on the bottom with the magnet instead of the top. The button here has the same kind of reed, the same kind of a proxy, and that reed is a little worn, so the button is less functional than the one on the other unit. But again, it's just easy to pop off the door and do it. Let's squeeze the bottle there. Now this cylinder, this one has the spring on the bottom too. The cylinder in the middle, next to the 3 ml bottle, causes the wiring to go straight from the atomizer connector into that little cylinder, and that little screw changes the voltage, which I find easy enough to do with a fingernail or a very small jeweler's screwdriver tip. So the wiring is a little more to the side rather than all right there under the bottle. It goes into that variable voltage control and then just to the switch just behind the bottle. And on this model there's a nice little finger catch. There's kind of a little finger indentation carved out of that wood separator in the middle so that it's much easier to grab the bottle to pull it out. But otherwise it works exactly the same way as the 3.7 volt model. Very small, square, rounded edges, very easy to hold and comfortable in the hand, even though that button's on the front, which I prefer them on the side, but that's me. So that was my close-up on the Phideas. It's a beautiful piece of wood. It's only got that 3 ml bottle. It's not hard to bring along an extra. These are the only ones I've really had any leakage on the inside. Now, that could seriously be just me and not the mod, but otherwise they perform great. So they're smaller, a little easier to hold, not a very big drip cup. This one we weren't able to figure the provenance on. We don't know if it's a Phideas copy, if it's a Phideas someone bought and then modified to be variable voltage, but the creator basically says he didn't do it. But you know, it's still pretty much from the front of Phideas, which is nice. So you know, those are their drawbacks. They all function well. The gravity feed, as I said on the close-up, is a little finicky. That button doesn't really spring back the way you would want it to for, you know, pushing. And oftentimes when I push it, it pulls the door away from the body a little bit. So I often just pop it off and squeeze with my finger and then pop the door back on. It's pretty solid. That's the Phideas. This close-up look is at the variable voltage MonkeyBoxx from Tom. It has a place you can get the ECF. The door here is not quite flush. There's a little squeaky looseness, but that's the only flaw in the construction. Has a very deep vertical wall drip well, so there's almost no juice hardly ever comes out of that, even when the unit goes to its side. A great steel clicky button. You can choose the wood. I chose Cocobolo with yellow maple ends, and I chose the wave inlay. You can choose a different one. It has an on and off switch, and then a small double sunken screw there that you can use to change the voltage and the voltage readout. I could have gotten something engraved and painted on here, but I didn't know what to choose, so I just left it plain. So it's gorgeous. It's a little thick, but it works like a charm. Inside, you can see he's made a little wooden holder to run the wires through so they can't pull or fray as easily. All the other electronics are inside a resin. The actual voltage control, the little magnet to hold your screw so you can take it with you to change the voltage, and then the actual LED readout are all inside that resin that's been sloped and shaved so that the door closes. On the other side there are two RCR 123s to power it, and a 6 milliliter bottle. Let's take the batteries out so we can get a closer look. And then you can see up inside at the wiring that sits behind the bottle. Now the bottle has a complete syringe end all the way down to the bottom of the bottle. This is the fiddliest of the feeder mods to refill the bottle because you have to pull it out of this silicone thing that goes up to the well, which requires you to grab that little plastic tube with your fingers and pull the bottle out. Now the bottle itself, the cap has a hole screwed in it so that the needle can go up through it. And then the needle itself is again in through the drip top, which I assume had to be drilled through. So you have to again get your fingers messy and get that drip. Now you can pull the needle all the way out. That top of the syringe sits on the bottom, and that's what sucks the juice up from the bottom to the top, even though you don't have to turn it upside down. So the easiest way to fill it is to just, without making a mess, is to push that off to the side and kind of drip around it and then poke it back in, which sometimes the act of poking it back in squirts juice out the top. And then it was hard for me at first to get the needles back through that top part on the cap. So, I mean, it's not impossible, it's not horrible, it's 6 mil, so you don't have to do it very frequently. And then you have to kind of thread that needle back into that plastic tubing so it meets the part of the needle that goes up through the atomizer connector. And sometimes that's a little finicky, and because it's flexible, you kind of got to get it in, and then you kind of got to work it up so it meets, because if that needle isn't pushed all the way into that tubing, it's hard to get the bottle back into its slot. But once it's there, it works perfectly. You got to make sure your little magnet screwdriver is up so that it fits in the space between the batteries and the ball. And you kind of use the screwdriver in that double sunk hole, turn it to the right to increase the voltage. It was at 5 before. So that's a close-up look at the MonkeyBoxx. I have the variable voltage model. The regular model is not quite so thick, a little wider, 18650, same 6 ml bottle. He is coming out, or he has already out, a mini MonkeyBoxx, which is a 14500 battery and a 3 ml bottle. I don't take this out with me an awful lot. I will use it in the car if I'm going on a long trip, but I usually don't take it into the office or any of that. I'm not sure why. I really don't want it to get marred, and it's a little clunkier, but I do love them. So I could solidly recommend this as a variable voltage model if that's what you're interested in.